I got this lantern at Hobby Lobby last year. I don't know, would you call it a lantern? Doesn't have a light in it, but it was $11.99. I got it 40% off. And as soon as I saw it, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it, but I just didn't do anything with it last Christmas. So this Christmas, we're gonna decorate it. This paper came in my Sonnets Makers box, and it's from the Painted Photographer. And I'm gonna cut it to fit the inside of my lantern, but I'm just resting it against the back just to kind of figure out exactly how much I'm going to cut off. I do cut the white off the sides and then round off the corners on each side. And this is just such a pretty wintry scene, and I figured it fit perfectly for a wintry scene inside this lantern. I had to do a bit of cutting to get this to fit just right, but all was right in the end. So I'm going to put a good layer of liquid patina on the inside here, and this is where our paper is going to go. I'm just brushing it on with my fan brush, and I made the mistake of not wiping this out first. I don't know why, I just didn't even think to do so, and I was battling against a few hairs, but I was able to just remedy that by wiping my fan brush onto a paper towel. I spritz my paper a little bit with some water. It's going to make it so much easier to place inside of my lantern. And it also helps with wrinkles. I have to admit it was a little tricky working on the inside of this, but I made it work. And I'm honestly in love with how this came out. For me, I really love a calming ambiance, and this piece gives exactly that. I'm using my fan brush to just push out some of those wrinkles, and then I'm going to go over it with a coat of liquid patina and just keep pushing out those little air bubbles that keep reappearing. Then I'm going to take my Regal Flourishes mold. This is by Redesign. I'm going to dust it with some cornstarch, grab my Das air dried clay and roll it out into a long log shape, and then press that down into my mold using my fingers and my thumbs to push off the excess, making sure to get the clay in there real good. And this mold is similar to the Claire mold. That mold has the same design on a larger scale. The one there off to the right hand side with like all the ornate designs. It's such a pretty mold. And then of course I flex my mold and roll it back to release my casting, and I'm using my nail dotting tool just to remove like any excess that's on the sides of the mold that may have stuck, and that seems to do the trick pretty well. And I'm going to set my casting along the side here. I want it to touch both the side and the backing, so it's essentially like a trim, like trimming. But this casting is pretty delicate, and so I really had to be mindful of how I picked it up, but I'm not really too worried about any breakage because clay is just so forgiving, and if something does crack, I can easily just piece it right back together instead of adding the glue directly to the back of my casting like I typically do, adding it right onto my surface. I'm using some Titebond Quick and Thick multi-surface glue for this part. It's my go-to gluing medium for my castings. Once I have my casting into place, I'm just going to gently press it down, being real careful not to distort any of those details. It hasn't formed a crust yet, so everything is still really soft and easy to shift. I'm going to repeat that on the opposite side. And I did have some breakage here. No biggie, just glue that down. I'm going to repeat that and make a third one, but I'm just doing a partial casting with this, and I'm going to place it along the top. My vision for this is a little woodland scene we'll have those pretty birch trees and the snow in the background. And then I'm bringing in some evergreens like pine trees up in the front, along with a pretty deer. I just want it so that when you look at it, you're immediately pulled into this little world, almost transferred right into the scene for a magical wintry feel. And so I'm changing the orientation here to place this up top. And I'm going to speed this step up because you've already seen me do the sides. Next, I'm going to dust my Chantel mold with some cornstarch. I got it a little heavy, so I flip it over onto my backing sheet, roll my clay into a log, and then I'm going to use this roller to flatten it out. And I actually got it a bit too thin, but that's okay. Once I lay the clay into the mold, I'm just going to take that overhang and push it right back into the design. And then remove the excess with my thumbs. And then flex my mold and roll it back to release my casting. And this mold is especially fun because there's so many different elements that you can play with for such a small mold. So I'm going to separate this piece from my design, the bow here and the florals, flip the whole design over. And it's okay that I had that little breakage there because I'm going to separate on the opposite side and just do a little tidying here with my nail dotting tool. Add a little bit of Titebond quick and thick to the back and spread it with my finger. Then I'm going to set this along the top. I had a little breakage here, and that's okay. I'm going to just glue that back into place. And I'm just fiddling here where I want to place my bow. And for these pieces that I removed, I'm going to add them in continuation here on the sides. And I'm just taking my nail dotting tool here and adding the holes back in the bow. But then there's these little designs here on the side of my rose, so I'm just removing those. My bow fits perfectly here with that rose settling right in the center. Just like that. This project ended up drying for a few days before I could get back to it, and I noticed a small gap here where my castings didn't quite meet, so I'm pressing a little bit of clay down into that spot and using my nail dotting tool to help work it in nicely. Then I'm just going to smooth everything out with my finger. I'm not going to bother paint these castings. I'm going right in with some bronze metallic paint by Paint Couture, and I'm going to brush it all over my castings. I think it matches perfectly with the color of the lantern. I'm brushing this on in sections, just a little bit at a time, and working it into all those low points. And then I'm wiping back some of it with a baby wipe. This really helps paint settle into all those details and gives the castings so much definition, and that's the goal when working with clay. At least for me, I love that vintage old world look, but maybe you prefer to paint your castings to showcase the details and keep everything looking fresh and new, right? Because we all have our own tastes and likes and dislikes. So, make it what you want. This would be so pretty without the clay. I just have this thing about adding clay to everything because that's just what I like. But alone with the paper itself, and maybe take some of those pine picks and use those to go around the inside. Those would look so pretty. In fact, I even considered doing that, but I love clay and I love, working with it. So this is just my choice, and, make it whatever you like. We're going to begin decorating, but the thing is, every time I open up the door, it wanted to fall forward. So I'm going to just use a couple of these Jenga blocks underneath just to keep it in place. So I'm going to add some trees, and this one's a little flat, so I'm going to take my heating gun and just fluff it up. It only takes like 2 seconds. I had a viewer say, well, you could put it in warm water. I could put it in warm water, but this is just so quick. You just add just a dite of heat and it's fluffed right back up. No mess, no nothing. That quick. Look, it's done. It works perfectly for fall leaves, just any florals that you have that just need a little fluffing, a little bit of heat. Boom, perfect. And this is one of those Dollar Tree mop heads. I don't remember why I separated the stitch, but this works perfectly for this. I'm going to trim it back. It's a little bit too long, or a lot of it too long. And so the slit that's in the mop head works perfectly for what I'm going to set here, because I'm adhering it onto the lantern, not onto the mop head. And I just sped that up super fast because you know how to cut. And I'm going to begin arranging things. I got these Dollar Tree ornaments from my stash, and I'm gluing one of those off to the side. It has a little bell I glued in the top there so you don't see where the hole is for the hanger. Next, I'm going to add the sweet little deer, and in that same slit mark, I'm going to add some hot glue to his little feet and set him right down into the lantern. So then the snow is all around his feet. I added a little bit of glue under my tree and then closed up that slit mark. Then I'm going to add a few presents and another smaller tree here in the front. I'm just separating the fluff on the mop head, that way it's sitting like on the backing, if that makes sense. And then I have these bows that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to take a green one and put that right on my deer's neck. And then these lights, I'm going to run them through the top, kind of like in the back, but through the top, and arrange them all around the inside. And that is it for this project. It is so pretty. Look at it at nighttime. My husband loves it, but I love it too. It's an easy project. Like I said, you could totally skip the clay, and you could probably throw it together in a matter of just seconds, minutes. I hope I inspired you to go to Hobby Lobby and find one of these. They have them year round. And thank you for spending a bit of your day with me. Until the next one, bye.